Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to our LinkedIn Live. And we're particularly excited about this week's LinkedIn Live because we have Cameron Dowd on our call, and he is the CTO and co-founder of. Do you know what, Cameron? Introduce yourself, please, because my dead.
Sure.
Sorry.
Thanks, Samantha. My name's Cameron Dowd. I'm CTO and one of the co-founders of Inverto Earth. Essentially, we're a company based in Switzerland, but focusing mainly on the restoration and monitoring of different ecosystems, and in particular coastal ecosystems such as mangroves. So when we started off doing systems around essentially automated planting of mangroves using drones and things like this, so basically a drone that can plant the mangrove seeds themselves. And these are particularly plants that grow into tidal areas, coastal areas, which there aren't any around Switzerland. But that's a bit where we've been focusing.
Yes, because you're joining us from Switzerland today. And we have Naeem here, who's the CEO of Digicore. Naeem, tell everyone a little bit about yourself.
Hi, Cameron. Welcome to our podcast. And hi, and welcome everybody else who's joining as well and listening in. So, me and Sam usually do a once a monthly duo, and this is our podcast on mangroves, which we'll talk about in a minute. Quick intro for people who haven't met me. Naeem Atta, as Sam said, CEO of Digicore and founder. Back in 2015, I started the company. My background is all software development. I have been in IT and software engineering for 40 odd years. And really, it's my career started as doing simulations for the Royal Air Force and Navy for some of their logistical movements. And then I spent about 20 years in the energy sector, and that's where I developed my passion for clean energy, and then moved on to climate change and tackling climate change. And my passion is really obviously to utilize digital innovation to help accelerate the impact of blue and green nature initiatives. Just a couple of words on Digicorp, Sam, if that's okay, and Cameron. So really, we want to lead the charge on sustainability through digital innovation. That's my vision. And with our background in simulations, in particularly mine, we've become a specialist in digital twinning, which is effectively taking physical environments and converting them to digital versions, and then being able to use cool things like AI and the advancement of sensors to really model and then project and predict different scenarios. So that's a little bit about me and what Digicorp does.
Well done, and thank you so much to people who are starting to join us. Lovely to see you. If you have any questions, please do comment. If you want to ask a question, and I might feature it on screen. So, what projects? I know you're planning to collaborate on some projects. So, can you tell me more about that, Naeem? The projects between yourself and Cameron.
Yeah, absolutely. So we're really excited, to be honest, to be collaborating with Inverto Earth, and really this is at Digicorp. It's about leading innovation and developing advanced solutions that directly support global climate restoration efforts. And really, and the idea, the reason we've partnered up with Inverto Earth is because we want to harness digital technology to drive measurable and sustainable impact on ecological recovery, and that's at the heart of what Inverto Earth do in their on the physical side. And really, Sam, we're forging alliances with. So we cover the digital aspect, and we're forging alliances. Strategic alliances with companies. We did so far recently, and we've got Inverto Earth. And the idea is with our digital solutions and the physical aspects taken care of great companies like Inverto Earth, we collaborate together to give holistic solutions. So they cover the physical transformation of ecological environments, and we provide, I suppose you could call it, ecological intelligence. That's collecting, analyzing, and projecting environmental data and to model outcomes using the latest AI techniques, or whether it's sensors, which are very getting more and more advanced. And Cameron will talk about some of the amazing work they're doing using drone technology and using swarms of drones to do precision restoration. And really, from our side, we want to monitor and predict through our platform and our products that we offer. Really, so the kind of things we're collaborating on is Cameron will talk about mangroves in a minute, but the key thing is, where we need to restore on an industrial scale, we can cover the ecological digital intelligence, and we need partners who can cover the scaling on a similar industrial scale on the physical side. And that's where we're looking to collaborate. We're particularly interested in working together within the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia at the moment, because there's a big drive there, and there's a lot of appetite for innovation and new techniques and breaking boundaries of new ways of restoring and monitoring and measuring the impact of the changes that we intervene in to help climate change or the reverse impacts of climate change.
Well, it's a huge issue right now, as we know. So Cameron, Inverto Earth is focused on reversing climate change through your carbon removal initiatives. What do you believe businesses should urgently understand about their role in the climate crisis right now?
And yeah, I mean, perhaps to be fully honest, I'm not sure anymore we'll ever be able to reverse climate change at this point. I mean, one of the founders of the IPCC has said, yeah, this whole 1.5 degree goal, we've passed it and we're never going to come back to that. So for a lot of things, it's already kind of too late. We're not going to be able to reverse it. We can maybe slow it. One of the most effective methods when we're talking, and like the way we see it, when we're talking about sustainability and having a livable planet within 50 to 100 years, carbon and the climate, that's just one part of it, but it's probably the one that's the easiest to measure. And it's also that's also kind of why we're focusing on natural ecosystems, because on one hand, they do have this very measurable impact on the climate in terms of carbon, but they have all these other benefits, which are a bit more complicated to measure around biodiversity and social benefits and things as well. But when it comes to essentially what business need to understand in terms of their role in, and I would go not just in the climate crisis, but also in the biodiversity crisis and so on. I mean, I think it's to understand that the system isn't, it's not a fully infinite and open system in the sense that if you're a company and assuming that you don't impact the climate or even natural ecosystems a lot because it's purely software based or things like this, everything is interrelated. And when it comes to even to the food that you're eating and things like this is relying not just on the climate system, but it's relying on a functional biodiversity as well. And to assume that like using more energy, using the use of like inefficiently using resources, whether you're software based or physical based or things like this, it all has an impact, and it's almost impossible to purely separate it out and to look at things purely from, okay, this is the tons of carbon that I'm emitting from purely my own activities, and this is, once that's compensated in some manner, that it's going to be net zero, and things will still keep, we can keep on doing things as we always had. So I think, yeah, perhaps to put it in a single sentence, it's a bigger picture than just carbon, and it's not something that we can just keep doing the same business as usual on. Things need to start changing if we want to have a world in 50 years that looks like the world that we grew up in, I guess.
Wow, really? Okay. And Naeem, Digicore uses technology to optimize operational efficiency for businesses. So how can digital transformation be used to advance sustainability goals rather than hinder them?
Yeah, that's a very important question, Sam, and that's the direction where Digicorp and our alliances with Inverto, we want to go in, and how that can happen is that there's a number of factors. There's of course there's policy from government. It's not going to happen just through digital innovation. So that's the first thing. I'd like to say it's good that we're seeing policy momentum build now with governments around the world, and we've got things like initiatives like the 30 by 30, which is protecting the sea, 30% of the sea by 2030. And I think that's just been ratified as a treaty, and a lot of governments are signing up to that. We've got EU nature credits. I know carbon credits took a bit of a hit in terms of, that they weren't as popular as they could have been. But EU nature credits is coming, and in the next 3 to 5 years, there's mandatory requirements on organizations to meet those. So all of those, there's effectively a sea change of policy coming, excuse the pun, and that's going to relate to quite significant action on the ground for restoration monitoring, and it's going to, I'm optimistic, it's going to enable organizations like DigiCorp. So the policy is one side, so that's not in our hand. But what is in our hand is the second thing, probably before we go into digital, is the financial funding of these. So the funding frameworks that are there. So as well as those various policies, government and private sector and obviously academic institutions need to work together to fund these initiatives, which are going to do all the work, great work that Invert Earth go out and plant hundreds of hectares of mangroves, and so those things are not in our hand, but I can see a very positive move towards those taking fruition in the next 3 to 5 years, and there's going to, those mandatory requirements mean companies have to enact, and they're no longer optional. So they become mandatory. So that's great. So we're seeing that. And how does that? So from the digital side, so the reality is, as Cameron said, is stark. So our planet's being destroyed on an industrial scale. And to counter that, we need to restore on an industrial scale. And the only way we're going to do that is the third pillar that I'm talking about. So there's policy, there's finance, and then there's a technical innovation. So that's where we see ourselves, DigiCorp and Invert Earth, with the kind of innovative techniques we're implementing to support that. And the effort required over the next 3 to 5 years as a result of these policies is going to be immense. So, our digital twin product can help understand complex nature systems, where, as Cameron said, things are so interconnected and so delicately balanced in all of these nature ecosystems. You can't just go in there and start doing one thing and hope that you're doing a positive impact. So the idea is with pulling the data back from environments, getting the algorithms to learn and create those correlations and relationships and all the statistical models that sit behind nature, understanding those in a holistic way, and then intervening in an appropriate manner to uplift each nature system, rather than trying to tinker with a specific attribute of a nature system, is I think that's where our products, particularly DigiCorp, will help. That's one aspect. Another aspect I think DigiCorp can help quite significantly in is in our product base. The other thing we want to do is monitor and measure things. And the old saying, if you only when you can measure something do you really know anything about it. So it's all great creating these initiatives, but what we want to do is on an industrial scale. So whether it's doing things like looking at sites for appropriate ecological restoration for example, mangroves, you may be looking at satellite imagery to identify best sites to do that, to optimize the yield on those and the highest success rate, and you can and understanding those complex, delicately balanced systems means things like you may think, okay, you want to plant 100 hectares of seagrass meadows, but the water may not be clean enough, and oysters and mussels we know help with filtering plankton and letting sunlight in to increase photosynthesize seagrass to increase its growth. So all of those intricate balances have to be understood, and that's where I believe our digital product line can really help with measuring, reporting, verifying, because it's no good. Not only have you got to do this thing on an industrial scale, that environment, the way you do that has got to optimize over time so that you learn from your mistakes, the algorithms learn, the platforms learn, and you feed back to the physical world what the digital world is projecting, where things are going. So I think we can help in so many ways, and those digital intelligence algorithms will really significant. I don't want to overuse the AI phrase, but that's one aspect, and really we just would need to restore on an industrial scale, and I'm sure if Cameron can talk about how they look at restoring, and I love their story about the mangroves and what they've done in the Indus Delta, and if he can talk about how they create industrial restoration, that would really bring it home to what we're talking about as well, and we work with them on the digital side and the physical side coming together, and that intersection is really where it's key for us to provide sufficient economies and sufficient optimization to solve these problems with the least amount of resources.
Over to you, Cameron. Can you go into that a little bit for us?
Yeah, sure. And I mean, as Naeem is saying, I mean, when we're talking about these ecosystems, we're not just talking about optimizing carbon anymore. I mean, that's typically how people have been looking at it. But when we want to have a robust ecosystem that lasts for 50 to 100 years, there's this whole range of not just like diversity of species, diversity of plants and animals, how this all interrelates. And that's a bit more complicated to model than just a single number. And that's where we need this additional level of complexity in modeling, which was never possible, 30, 40 years ago. But yeah, I guess, more concretely in terms of the work we've been doing. So we've been focusing kind of on two things as a company. Part of it's been on these drone-based solutions for planting mangroves at large scales, and perhaps to go into a bit some of the challenges in these mangrove ecosystems. So mangroves particularly, they're trees essentially that grow in intertidal areas. So always in salty water, generally in areas of mixed of salty and fresh water as well. So river deltas and things like this. They're not just one species of tree. There's about 30 different species of mangrove tree, and some of those tree species are not related at all to any of the others. So it's more of like a functional class of tree in that sense. But what's really interesting about mangrove trees in particular is that they can grow in these salty environments. So that means that you don't need to irrigate them or things like this. They're very robust in terms of changing rainfall and things like this. So particularly in arid countries where terrestrial trees may be more difficult to grow, there's been large commitments to growing mangrove trees because they don't require additional irrigation and things like this. They are a naturally occurring part of these coastal ecosystems. And what's also particularly interesting with mangrove ecosystems is compared to terrestrial rainforests, they sequester up to 5 to 6 times more carbon per unit area. So if you're going to restore 1 hectare of any kind of forest, mangroves kind of give you the best bang for your buck in terms of carbon, and not just carbon in terms of biodiversity as well, because they are in between water and land ecosystems. You're affecting life on land, life in the water. So for local fishermen and things like this, they see benefits to their catches even as mangrove ecosystems are restored, because they're such crucial nurseries for fish ecosystems and things like this. And even if you're thinking about fisheries in Europe, which may be miles away from mangroves and things like this, a lot of it's all an interconnected food chain. So a lot of these fish, when they're migrating or things like this, are relying on smaller fish, which may come from more tropical areas that are relying on mangroves and things like this. And even farmed fish, actually. Most farmed fish is eating caught fish. This caught fish is caught in the tropics. They grow up in the mangroves. But a bit of an aside. We've been focusing on trying to find ways to scale this, the restoration of mangrove trees in particular. And it is so difficult to do it using hand planting because it's always intertidal. You have very narrow windows in which you can plant. The seeds they come off the tree already germinated and ready to go. So they only have a window of about two weeks to a month when they're still viable. So you have a relatively short planting season. The typical approach is to grow out the seeds in nurseries, but then it takes a lot more handwork. So our solution is essentially robotic systems that allow you to do this at large scales. These are most interesting where you have to reach a massive scale, or there's areas that are hard to reach. Mangroves are also really interesting because they restore themselves really well if the conditions are correct and if there's a supply of local seeds. So you see in places like Indonesia, Vietnam and things where an area's been cleared of mangroves, if the conditions are right, mangroves will come back without any additional effort. And so the first question always is, do you need to actually actively plant? In the areas where you do need to actively plant, or you have a very short time frame to reach certain goals, then these automated systems begin to make a lot of sense. And here we can plant at rates that are about 200 times faster per hour, or planting 200 times as many trees per hour as you could using hand methods. And this really allows you to reach these massive scales. But then the crucial part of this is you need to make sure, first of all, you're planting in the right places where the conditions are correct. That's the biggest determiner for that is essentially the hydrology. So you have to use different methods to measure out this hydrology and make predictions and things like this. And also it can be affected by things like if someone builds irrigation canals higher up on a river, that will affect the sedimentation all through the river and it can result in erosion at the mouth of a river or sedimentation at the mouth of a river, depending what people are doing hundreds of kilometers away. So it's a very interrelated system in that sense. Our work's mainly been focused on essentially, planting these mangroves and then monitoring their growth. And at this moment, mainly the carbon, although we've been trying to find ways we can financially support the measurement of all these metrics around biodiversity as well. But the voluntary biodiversity market is still very nascent in that sense. So still mainly working within the carbon market to enable the restoration of these sites. So we're essentially a technology provider. We work with some amazing local projects in the Indus Delta. It's Delta Blue Carbon, who are the actual project developers, doing it at a massive scale, 600,000 hectares, an extremely impressive project. And there we're just one small part of this and helping them with reaching these scales. But yeah.
One small part of something huge. I mean, like Cameron, that's fascinating. That's actually, I didn't know any of that. So I'm sure people watching would be very fascinated to hear all of that as well. Well done. Did you want to add anything to that, Naeem, before I go to the next question?
No, I'd just like to say that they have done some amazing work. I know Cameron's very modest, but they are using drone technology, and they're doing some amazing stuff, to be honest. And it can only happen on an like we said, on an industrial scale when you use robotics and you use swarms of drones and you use to plant things rather than relying as Cameron said, because of all the constraints of the germination of seeds and the short windows and the seasonality and all those constraints together, you need to be able to industrialize restoration. So no, it's yeah.
Okay, so Cameron, what is the most challenging thing for you right now?
I mean, my background is in engineering. I'm someone who I can build things to solve problems, but our challenge is really essentially clients. I mean, areas where there's this massive need and scale to plant mangroves, where people are doing this. They're relatively few globally, and so I would say although everyone's aware of how important this work is and how crucial it is that we're not just like, if you look at any kind of ecosystem, there is essentially no ecosystems or no metrics even for the state of nature which show any improvements. It's every year always going down. At some point it's going to stop going down, but I hope that's before we hit zero. And everyone understands this. Everyone knows that we need to do more work to restoring and doing nature. But for us, there's relatively few projects that are trying to do this, and that means there's not a massive amount of clients for us right now. So that's, I would say, probably our key challenge is how can we find these financial mechanisms that can encourage this restoration of nature at the scales that we need.
So it's like awareness. I suppose doing things like this would be important. Making people aware of what's going on, because this is so much detail there that I didn't know about, for example. So I suppose the journalists have a big job to do, the media, the government. Naeem, have you anything to add to that? About the challenge?
Yeah, I'd like to. So Cameron's right. Those are the challenges, but it's also it's probably that probably sort of is a nice segue into what's exciting, or what we feel is around the corner, and Cameron's kind of alluded to that some of those challenges, but I see, I see us as sort of entering a transformative era in environmental policy. I know things have been slow, and it's been frustrating for all of us. We all want to be able to answer to the future generations, what did we do, to help with the impact of climate change, and how could we have been so reckless? So over the next 3 years, I do see sweeping regulatory shifts, and particularly in the financial instruments, they are maturing, and it is frustrating for us and Cameron that it's anything takes it needs financial support for it to succeed, and I think governments and corporations' approach to climate restoration and nature protection is shifting, and I see that as a great opportunity, because with the compliance, particularly with the EU's initiatives on nature restoration, nature credits, and 30 by 30, and several other initiatives, and the fact that compliance becoming mandatory, I think it's a matter of time, and I think that's why we're creating these strategic alliances so that the physical and the digital can both combine to optimize the restoration efforts and the monitoring efforts at scale. And I feel like with the product range that we've developed and are still developing right now, even and we're like Inverto Earth, we're partnering with academic institutions, other private partners. We're talking to governments, so it's really an exciting time as well, because that Digicorp's strength lies in data-driven innovation and strategic restoration partnerships, and as the regulations tighten, I'm confident the capital will flow, and ecological priorities will become central to restoration, and I think that will have us help deliver scientific-based outcomes with our global partners in physical restoration, the likes of Inverto Earth and so far, and I think we're prepared, Digicorp, and I'd like to think for the next 3 to 5 years in shaping hopefully a truly sustainable planet, and we can do our little bit to help, and I think that in summary, I think the momentum is going to shift quite significantly in the next 3 to 5 years. So it's frustrating, but I think the future looks positive. How successful it will be, time will tell. But I'm always a bit of an optimist, as you know, Sam.
Yeah, and Cameron, just for you, like, what are you the most excited about? Would it be similar, or is there anything else that you're excited about that's coming up?
I mean, yeah, it was definitely a lot of really exciting things at COP16 last year. So there's actually like 5 or 6 different types of COP, but this is a COP on biodiversity in particular. So not the one in Baku that was on carbon, but the one specifically focused on biodiversity. And actually in Montreal, so 4 years earlier, every country in the world had signed the Kunming-Montreal Biodiversity Treaty and had agreed to set targets for the restoration and protection of nature. 4 years later at COP16, only about 30 countries actually have put their plan together, and only a small number. But there is something actually changing. And 20, 30 years ago, you couldn't imagine an event like this where representatives from every country on Earth come together to discuss what concrete actions they're actually taking to protect and restore biodiversity. And so that, as Nadine is saying, there is this shift and this greater awareness that is leading, sometimes it feels way too slowly, to some real action on the ground. And yeah, I guess I'm excited to see more of this talk leading to real action on the ground and really making a difference. And yeah, I mean, I wouldn't be doing this if I wasn't optimistic at the at the base, kind of to say, okay, yeah, it's yeah, I can only do this if I can see there being an improvement. But yeah.
Well, you're a trailblazer, really, you know, both of you. You know, I feel, you know, if there's people there, we have 92 people watching this. So anyone who's watching, thank you so much for joining us. But also, if you have a question, please do put it into the comments and I will feature it. But like for people watching, how could people watching help, do you think? Like, is there anything that people can do to, would it be just to share stuff when you're putting it up on LinkedIn, for example? Would it be just to share your content and share the stories and the articles, maybe?
Yeah. I think so. I think it's about awareness, isn't it? And you know, people are already doing some great work, and people are sort of campaigning at the local level, and you know, even within local government, and so people have a voice, and through their MP, and through raising awareness, and you know, families, you know, parents have, you know, they've passed on knowledge to their kids, and so they can guide their children. So there's so many ways people are already helping and are already supporting, and you know, listening to this podcast is great. It means, you know, it just shows that maybe people pick up on some facts, and it's just useful, and yeah, there's people are already supporting in so many ways.
Yeah, okay. Well, what's the shared vision then for both of you together? Like, Cameron, what's the shared vision for both of you? Do you know what that is? Like in 5 years' time?
So I mean, yeah, I would be excited to see that we're able to use our technology to essentially scale the restoration of these crucial ecosystems to, yeah, to the scale that we need, which is in the order of several 100,000 hectares a year, even, and things like this, if we want to really be moving the dial on this, and to understand these impacts and optimize it much better through the digital tools that Naeem are working for. That's, yeah.
Naeem, same?
Yeah, absolutely. It's for the shared mission is all around, you know, bringing the physical and digital together to optimize and scale at pace, and as Cameron said, to turn up the dial to really make sure we restore in the most efficient way possible, and we learn from what we are doing, and we feed that back into those learnings back into the future restorations, and we monitor and we make sure that you know, the outcome is what we expect, and work together really to sort of to restore complete nature systems, rather than just tinkering at the edges, and have that holistic view. And yeah, I think those are the key things that we work together on, and we're definitely looking forward to working together with
Yes.
Cameron and Jörg, their CEO. Absolutely.
Yes, and if Jörg is watching, thank you so much, everybody, for tuning in. Just Cameron, before we let you go, I noticed you've had an image change, by the way, for anyone who's looking at our image earlier where Cameron had a moustache. The moustache is gone. It takes years off you. But just want to ask you, Cameron, is there any way that we can support you, people watching today? Like, have you anything coming up? Is there anything exciting coming down the line? Like, are you available to speak at events, for example? Are you available for other interviews? Let us know. Is there anything there?
I mean, yeah, I'm always happy to talk about the stuff that we're working on and things like this. We have, so we've just launched a new test of some of our latest improvement in essentially our automated planting systems is the use of specific biopolymer-based marine biodegradable darts that protect the seeds, anchor them in, and keep them much more stable during tidal changes and things like this. We're also exploring the additives of any kind of starter nutrients and things to improve these early survival rates. But we've just started a study testing some of these in Indonesia, and hopefully we'll have a video out showing kind of our latest system around that coming up in the next few weeks. And hopefully also we'll have a few further studies with these latest kind of seed darts that we have in other ecosystems to be announced. But and if anyone knows, anyone who'd be interested in trying some things like this, we're always open to chat as well. So.
Brilliant. And Naeem, same for you. If anyone is interested in talking to you, LinkedIn is the place to go, or Digicore. I'll put the website underneath. Is there anything you want to add before we go?
No, I just want to say thank you to everybody who's been listening, and we're really looking forward to working together to help do things in the climate in a very positive way. And if you do need more information about Digicorp, of course, there's the website, there's LinkedIn, there's a million ways to reach to people these days, aren't there? So
yeah,
well,
okay, well done, folks. Thank you so much. Thank you, everybody, for joining. We have 100 people watching, so thank you, folks, for taking time out of your busy day to join us. You can watch the replay here afterwards when we are, and if you want to put comments into the comments under the event, we will go and check them later as well. And feel free to reach out and connect with Cameron and Naeem. And thank you both so much for today. Thank you.
Thank you for hosting, Sam.
Yeah, thanks so much, Sam and Naeem.
Likewise.
All the best.
Bye.